The worst year in human history wasn't a year of war, no famous battle, no emperor murdered in his bed. Just a year the sun went out. 536 AD. Across much of the world, the sky turned to haze, a dry, dim fog. The sun still rose every morning, but it gave almost no light. A Byzantine writer named Procopius lived through it. He wrote that the sun shone without brightness, like the moon, for a whole year. Like a permanent eclipse, not for an hour, for months. Think about what that actually means. The light you plant your crops by, gone. The warmth of summer, gone. Over in Italy, a statesman named Cassiodorus described it perfectly. A winter without storms, a spring without mildness, a summer without heat. The temperature dropped, snow fell in the middle of summer, frost killed the harvest. And when the harvest dies, people die. Here's the first surprising part. This wasn't some local bad spell. Follow the evidence outward. In the Mediterranean, writers describe the dimmed sun. In Ireland, the old annals record a failure of bread. Travel all the way to China, and the records there describe yellow dust falling like snow, drought, and frost, the middle of summer. The same window in time. It all seems to line up. A shadow stretched across half the planet. And for the people underneath it, there was no explanation, no news feed, just a sun that had stopped working, and no idea why. Then it got worse. A few years later, around 541, a new horror arrived. Plague. What we now call the Plague of Justinian. It hit the capital, Constantinople, and it spread through the Roman world. We've since pulled the bacteria's DNA straight out of ancient graves. It was Yersinia pestis, the same germ behind the Black Death 8 centuries early. Now, be careful here, because this is exactly where storytelling gets slippery. For a long time, people said this plague killed as many as half the population of the empire, tens of millions. More recently, other historians have pushed back hard. They looked at the graves, the coins, the pollen buried in old lake beds, and argued the real toll was far smaller. That the famous numbers were guesses piled on top of guesses. Honestly, we don't know. Anyone who hands you one confident death toll is selling you a story. But even the cautious version is grim, cold, then famine, then plague, one blow, then another, landing on the same exhausted generation. That's why a Harvard historian, Michael McCormick, called 536 the start of one of the worst periods to be alive. Maybe the worst. And yet, here's a beat that should stop you. In the middle of all this, life didn't simply end. In the year 537, with the sun still dim, the Emperor Justinian finished building the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. One of the greatest buildings in the world, raised under a darkened sky. People kept going. That's the strange truth about catastrophe. It's rarely the clean end of everything. It's a wound that a wounded world keeps living around. So, the sun dimmed, crops failed, plague came, and for nearly 1,500 years, nobody knew why the darkness happened at all. This is the part I love, because we do know now, and we've only known it for a few years. The answer wasn't in any book, it was frozen in ice. Scientists drill long cores out of glaciers in Greenland and up in the Alps. Each layer is a single year of snowfall, sealed and stacked like the rings of a tree. And in the layer for 536, they found it. Sulfur, ash, tiny shards of volcanic glass. A volcano, an enormous one, early in 536, throwing a veil of sulfur high into the sky, where it spread around the globe and dimmed the sun. And then, the cruel part, the ice shows a second massive eruption around 540. A 1-2 punch, a volcanic winter doubled. Which volcano exactly? That part is still argued. The chemistry of those glass shards points a lot of researchers toward Iceland, or somewhere in the far north for 536. An older suspect, a volcano in El Salvador called Ilopango, has now been redated by many scientists to a completely different century. So we're confident it was volcanoes. We're still fighting about the addresses. And that's the thing worth sitting with. The single worst stretch to be alive wasn't caused by a villain, not a war, not a conquest, not a decision anyone made. It was a mountain on the far side of the world that most of its victims never saw and never heard of. It darkened their sky, froze their fields, and quite possibly softened up a whole civilization for the plague that came next. And they died never knowing the reason. We had to wait 15 centuries and learn to read the ice just to answer the question they were asking as they starved. Why has the sun gone out?
That's the strangest part of history. Sometimes the answer does arrive. It just arrives too late for anyone who needed it.